to move into a special topic Zach has for us this evening. What you got, good sir?
Yeah, so this is our feature for this episode, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot. I've been writing it's becoming a very beefy essay about action games. And
Can't wait to read it.
Me re-experiencing them, and I go through a lot of the history of their development, what makes a 3D action game, all these things. Why was Devil May Cry so important? Devil May Cry so important? All this stuff. What I have noticed in modern trends is an incredible watering down of action game mechanics. Obviously, we have action adventure games, action RPGs, way more common than just a core action game these days. And that's the way it's always been, pretty much. That being said, even in those action adventure games of yesteryear, a lot of them are going to have more complex action systems. God of War is pretty tough. If you ever go back and play God of War or God of War 2 on some of the higher difficulties, it's pretty tough. You have to, really manage your positioning. Sure, the combos themselves aren't as demanding as something like Devil May Cry, but got to manage your position. You got to think about how much magic you have left, how to use it, when to use it. You have to know what encounter's coming next. You have to really plan ahead for the actual action portion of it. RPG mechanics, however, have really started to take over in these games. Even look at God of War 2018 and Ragnarok. So many numbers and different quote-unquote builds, regardless of how much they actually influence the game. It's all there.
That was a huge part of our conversation for both of those games.
Both of those games. The weakest part of both by far. And ended up watering down the combat to some extent. Like, you can still build a complex combat system, but here's the problem. When you add RPG mechanics, you are now adding a new way to test the player. And so if you make it so that you have to be very good at the action combat, how do you then measure the RPG portion of it? So let's say I have to be really good at the action combat, but I also have to be at this level to fight this boss is the best level, and you should be using this status effect or a blade that has this property or something. Something about the build and build variety and stuff like that. They have to be balanced in a way that if one doesn't matter and the other is overemphasized, you're going to ask, why is the other one even there a lot of the time? And it's vice versa. And people are going to prefer developing RPGs because it adds variety inherently. And they're honestly a little easier to develop because they're simply balancing numbers rather than balancing positioning, speed, frame data, fighting game stuff. It's a little bit easier to develop for, but you have to weight them. If one feels meaningless, why am I playing it at all? Why is this part of the game at all? Right? And so it will inherently pull down the requirement of the action combat, how much it can demand of you, because it needs to increase how much the RPG elements actually matter to that combat. There are examples of it not being watered down a whole lot. Now, the skill required might be watered down a little bit, but that's fine because something like Stranger of Paradise still has a pretty dense combat system that's fun to engage with despite an incredibly heavy emphasis on RPG mechanics. Way more than most even, action adventure titles today. The combat system in Stranger of Paradise is very good. I've only played the first few hours, but it's RPG heavy, but it's still good, but it is watered down compared to their previous games. So here's the trend that I kind of have in my mind. Devil May Cry 1 was made. It had some adventure game components from its Resident Evil lineage. You have to find an item, but you bring it. You only have one item key item at one time. You bring it to one place, and the mission's done. It's not very robust. The adventure component is very small. It's primarily the action. That's a hard game. It's a very hard game, even on the base difficulty. And so you got God of War. Comes around, really softens that. It makes it more inviting, lowers the skill ceiling, lowers the skill bar as well for entry, and really emphasizes the interconnected levels and puzzles and the space, really brings the adventure up a notch and really sets the template for modern action adventure games. in God of War, we get QuickTime events because we want to still look flashy. We want to still look like the kind of stuff people can pull off in Devil May Cry. Really skilled people in Devil May Cry can pull off. So we'll give them QuickTime events. Get a really cool cinematic kill. The player did it because they were involved by pushing buttons. Right?
Sure.
Take that as you will. But that's the idea behind it, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea behind it. And so, okay, now we get Dark Souls. Dark Souls comes along 6 years later. And you can even say Demon Souls. But Dark Souls was the real doorbuster for development inspiration. Dark Souls comes along. It has action combat, dodging, hitting, placement, all these things, with a huge emphasis on RPG mechanics. Huge emphasis. So you're getting these you've taken the cinematic side out of it pretty much entirely. You put a scale up real large and you just start using these RPG mechanics. Are you the right level? Are you the right build? Are you using your build to the best of your ability? And then you have to be good at dodging and fighting in the game. But it's a simple, very, very simple system. You have a simple combo, maybe two, you dodge, you have some items that you can use. You have to implement it in an action way, but it's primarily RPG. And I mean, it doesn't take a genius to look at Team Ninja making Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2. Huge deal, entirely action combat focused pioneers of games. Moving to Ninja Gaiden 3, where they implement QuickTime events, big scale boss design. And then what's their next game that's not a Dead or Alive title? That's not true. It's Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. But the next game of that Ninja Gaiden ilk, Neo. Heavily RPG focused, simpler combat mechanics. Primarily focusing on the simple dodging, simple combos, and the RPG mechanics. Your level.
Oh, I do think that was the next game, actually. I think Neo came out first. Before...
You might be right. I don't remember.
That came out a couple years into the Switch.
It was 2017 for Neo. I don't remember when Ultimate Alliance was, so it must have been.
19,
if it was a couple of years. Okay, there you go. And then Neo 2, and then Stranger of Paradise. Heavy RPG focus. Stranger of Paradise has more fun action combat than Neo, probably. I need to play Neo 2. But you see what I'm saying, though? Like, there's this watering down, and I mean, compare the action component of Neo to Ninja Gaiden, and there is the depth. It becomes way shallower because of the weighting of the RPG mechanics, and this is becoming more and more common. Like I said, God of War 2018. If you look at Assassin's Creed, and not like I'm saying that's an action title or that its action combat was good, but even it RPGified. You know what I mean? Like, RPGs have to be weighted up to make the RPG mechanics count, which end up watering down the other side of it. This is a pretty common trend. So I have some interesting things here. So, who has carried the torch, and is there any hope? So we talked about Team Ninja. Action RPGs ever since Neo. I don't see them ever changing. Platinum Games. Bayonetta did not inspire really any people to make games like Bayonetta. Like, can you think of... I can't think of any.
It was a little shot in the arm for interest in the genre, but you're specifically talking about on the side of development.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, nobody really took that up. And Platinum is really an island, and even they are starting to show signs of conforming. Not to RPGs specifically, but...
more accessible
they're
things.
Hitting hard on Bayonetta right now and really doubling down on their experimental projects aren't doing much because they bombed with Babylon's Fall. And
did you play that?
No way.
Try it out, man. See what happens.
Okay. I have here Who the Hell Knows for Grasshopper Manufacturer, because who the hell knows?
They're not even... Oh, actually, they have made a couple, but that's... they just make so many different things.
They make a lot of action games, though, especially compared to other studios. Killer is Dead, Lollipop Chainsaw, the 3 Travis games.
Yeah.
Or sorry, well, not the 3, but 3 main Travis games. And there's one other one.
Mad World.
No, that's Platinum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking Shadows of the Damned.
Yeah, that's a shooter. Definitely not.
It's a shooter with heavy involvement from, I think he directed it's like Itsuno. Not Itsuno. Suda and I forget what role he had, but Shinji Mikami, the guy who made Resident Evil.
Oh, you can see that immediately.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Heard.
In fact, I was going to say, yeah, it's a little bit like a Resident Evil game.
Yeah, it's him. Devil May Cry. How can anyone take inspiration from Devil May Cry 5? It's the result of an iterative process spanning 20 years. What are you supposed to take from that? I have an interesting thing, though. Itsuno, though. Hideaki Itsuno? I don't know. Whatever. Itsuno, the guy who made Devil May Cry 2 through 5, I think of his other game, which is a RPG, he made Dragon's Dogma.
Which we want to play. It's high on both of our lists, right?
Yeah. And...
is it getting up there? Because if we want to slot it in sometime this year, that's
I'd love to play it whenever. But it's very interesting that he made that game, and it would probably be pretty pertinent to this conversation. How he implements something like that. FromSoft, yeah, right. Sekiro is a one-off. They're never going back to what Sekiro did.
Yeah, especially after
Elden Ring.
After Elden Ring, yeah.
Compare this to the Xbox and PS2 and the PS360 era. Lots more titles from folks like FromSoft, Ninja Blade, Atogi, Konami, Nanobreaker, Capcom, God Hand, Chaos Legion, and even Sega, Blood Will Tell. Just way more core action titles. Like, sure, they're not on the level of something like Devil May Cry, but they are action games.
Well, as you said, 20 years of iteration.
Yeah.
Few things can be on that
exactly.
level.
But they're just action games. Heavenly Sword. I mean, what happened to that? Where did that go? It's drowning under the influence of Dark Souls, I would argue. Drowning under the influence that Dark Souls brought to the genre. You can look how people engage with a dodge with some iframes, a shield, a sword with one combo, and high difficulty. And then a lot of RPG stuff. Look how people engage with this. They engage with it well. We don't need to worry about making these complex, or not even complex, just deep combat systems where the action is the core of the title and can carry it for 28 hours. 8 hours can carry it for 8 hours.
And then make you compelled to do it for 8 hours.
El Shaddai!
3 more times.
El Shaddai is a game that exists.
Yeah.
Like,
it does exist.
I just want less RPG in my games, in my action games. It's just a trend I've been noticing. It's one that I'm kind of lamenting right now, and I'm looking for some hope. So obviously we will be getting Devil May Cry 6 or some spin-off or something. 5 was a huge hit. We'll be getting that. So there's hope there. Platinum will likely still make Bayonetta games. I don't know if they're ever going to make another original IP based on how their sales have probably been going lately. But
really, you don't think so?
Dude, Babylon's Fall hit them hard.
Fair enough.
I was watching a video talking about like what that did to that company.